Good morning. Today I'd like to talk about, um, after a post that came put up yesterday, I'd like to talk about the correlation between loneliness and depression. And I can't tell you how it is or how it is and say, oh, this causes this. Because nature is so complex and diverse, there's so many variables to be considered. But what I can do is talk about my own experience and I can give you some perspectives to consider and to contemplate for yourself, because as I say, there's a lot depending on a number of variables. There's a number of variables like that come into play. But as I say, I can give you some of the more important ones to consider. Jean-Paul Sartre said, if you're lonely when you're alone, you're in bad company. Now this is very true, and I will explain that in more detail in a minute. But first of all, I want to deal with another subject, which is what Rumi said. It was Osho that said this. The capacity to be alone is the capacity to love. And this is very, very true. You can look up the whole quote. I'm not going to give you the whole quote, because I thought it's too long anyway. But the capacity to be alone is the capacity to love. Because I often say if you don't need love, that's when you can love. Because if you need love, you're just a needy motherfucker. You're just a desperado. You're just clinging to a codependent relationship. But if you don't need anybody, if you don't need love, then you don't have to cling to the first log that comes sailing down the stream. You don't need anybody. It becomes a choice. It becomes and you're not needy and you're not clingy, because you know you'll always be okay, and you know like that you don't need anybody. You can survive perfectly well on your own. Miley Cyrus's Flowers is a very good song to listen to, but I've already played it, so I won't be playing it again this morning. But basically, she'll hold her own hand and take herself out, and that is the attitude that you have to take, because it takes a conscious attitude to first of all actually realise that you're depressed, because that in itself takes a realisation like that I am depressed, and now I may remove my head from my arse, or I can continue to suffer on, because some people like to suffer, believe it or not. Some people like to sit in the depressed state and lick their balls, and if they do, by all means let them on, let them do so. You can't save anybody. It has to be their own conscious choice to remove their head from their arse. But interventions don't work in that regard. You only compounder. They'll only they'll sink you, like they'll fucking sink you. Actually, the best thing to do is leave them be. Unless they make a conscious choice to remove their own head from their arse, leave them be. That's the best advice I could give you. But let's talk about some of the causes and the correlation between loneliness and depression. Number one, from my own experience, from empirical knowledge, when a relationship ends, there can be a bout of depression. And this is very much caused because there's a severe drop in the levels of oxytocin. And oxytocin is one of the best feel-good hormones that there is. This is why love feels so good, because like oxytocin is docks in the heroin receptors. It's really, really powerful hormone and a really big feel-good hormone. Now I don't need to go into it. I've talked before about what causes the release of oxytocin, but when there's a severe drop in the levels of oxytocin, in other words, when you kick to the curb and there is no more oxytocin to be got, of course there has to be a biological factor. And that's why they say like that the best thing you could do when you finish one relationship is get into another. They call it the rebound thing, but this is an attempt. It's a weak dilution of the oxytocin, but it still serves a sufficient purpose. But I wouldn't like to be anyone's rebound anyway, because you're living in someone's shadow, basically. You're living in somebody's shadow. And then if they cling to you out of fear, you're just living in someone's shadow for a whole fucking lifetime. And fuck that, like, you know what I mean? Fuck that, you know. But so that's the first reason. There can be a biological rebound, but you can. What's very important is your attitude towards the way of things. You have to be able to absorb that biological thing, and I personally wouldn't like to use anybody as a rebound. When I found myself in that situation, with a severe drop in the levels of oxytocin, I just sat it out. And I tell you the truth, I studied the subject in order to alleviate the symptoms, and that's how I come to have researched the subject of depression quite extensively. Now, at the same time as I was researching the subject of depression, I had chronic arthritis in my hands, and they say that the pain can cause you to be depressed. No, the pain didn't cause me to be depressed at all, because I remember making a video down in a cafe called the Lazy River in Carlow. I was saying I have sore hands, and I'm still fucking happy. Hands like two balloons. You know how it's like the Pink Floyd song, Comfortably Numb. But I had hands like two balloons, and I was still happy. So it very much depends on your attitude towards the way of things. But on the subject of oxytocin, like I was then researching not only to fix my depression, but also to fix the chronic arthritis in my hands. And so I was studying inflammatory conditions. And I found that fibromyalgia is caused by an inflammation in the meninges between the hypothalamus and the brainstem, and that's why it causes brain fog, because it's on the hypothalamus, and it causes brain fog, and it causes pains in the joints in the peripheral nervous system. It causes pains in your joints and things like this. So it impacts on both the brain and the nervous system. But because you have brain fog in your brain can't function properly, so it can't manufacture acetylcholine, which is the receptor responsible which is the neurotransmitter responsible for activating the receptors in the part of the brain for the uptake and download of information. So you have trouble focusing and concentrating, and the acetylcholine also goes down the vagus nerve and activates receptors in the gut. So then when the gut gets backed up because the brain doesn't make acetylcholine, so the gut gets backed up and causes weight gain. So now you have brain fog and weight gain, and then because the gut can't work properly, it can't process zinc. So even if it can't process the zinc, so it can't make oxytocin. You need zinc to make oxytocin, and you need zinc to make the testosterone. But if you can't make the oxytocin, then you can't. You're no interest in forming relationships, or no interest in bonding with anybody. In other words, you'd be highly happy to just sit and lick your balls in your room. You've no interest in any relationships or bonding with anybody. You can't manufacture oxytocin. So therefore, that's going to be a chain reaction. It's going to be a problem. And then of course, the backed up gut, because the gut and the brain work simultaneously, compounds your problems. So really, like, one of the first things you have to do is you need probiotics, and a good lot of probiotics get your gut cleared out. Then you can start to eat to treat the inflammatory condition. A high antioxidant diet, lay off the liquor, intermittent fasting. There's a number of things. I'm not going to start talking about that now. While I'm on the subject of biological conditions for depression, I also want to tell you that lion's mane will fix your bipolar. You need it because lion's mane is a mushroom that comes in but you can buy it in capsule form, and it replenishes the myelin sheath and the axon of the brain cell, which allows for better connectivity in the brain, and this will fix your bipolar. It's excellent for any conditions with the brain or the central nervous system, but it's lion's mane. And if you really want to boost it then as well, a bit of hemp seed oil. Now there's a number of 369 oils. You can use flaxseed oil, you can use Udus oil, but I like hemp seed oil because I quite like the hemp seed oil, but it's a very good balance of 369. The golden ratio, that's for the brain, and will improve the neuroplasticity in the brain, which will also help you if you have a good diet to expand your consciousness, because it allows for you easier to break out from the neural pathways that you're using. That's why some people say we only use 10% of our brain, but that's not quite true for everybody. That's absolute bullshit. Some people only use 10% of their brain because they stay doing the same shit over and over again. They have a repetitive job, so they just get up, stay doing the same thing, get up in the morning, go do their usual patterned routine, go to bed that night. But that only uses that. You don't need much brain activity for that, for that repetitive behavior. So therefore, you don't use the brain, and it just goes into the default mode network, and that can cause depression. So in other words, your brain needs stimulation, and you can stimulate it in 101 ways. But what I advise you to do is break out from the patterns. Like, for example, I change my coffee regular. I buy different fags. I buy different fag brands all the time. I finished in the gym yesterday. I'm going to start yoga today. I didn't walk the Kaufland yesterday. You break the patterns, break the patterns, break the patterns. And then I study philosophy, and I study and I watch different films, different genres of films. Yesterday I watched a Japanese film with subtitles. And this all stimulates the brain. New things, but break out from the patterns. This will stimulate the brain. Where was I going to say? Oh yeah, so I started off talking about loneliness. Yes, so basically, if you find yourself alone, this is very good, because, as I say, the capacity to be alone is the capacity to love. But you have to learn how to be alone. You have to learn how to be your own best friend. So you have to learn how to talk to yourself, and you have to learn how to. This is how you get to know yourself. This is what the road about the temple. Know thyself, know thyself. Let me tell you, it's very hard to get to know yourself if you're continuously in codependent relationships. But if you manage to take the opportunity that's given to you and get to know yourself when you're given the opportunity to know yourself, and you take this opportunity, as I say, your attitude towards the way things, and use it to get to know yourself. Sit and talk to yourself, not scroll on your phone, but sit and talk to yourself. And even if you want to, you can altered states are very conducive to this. You can either smoke grass or you can meditate. Personally, I'd rather smoke grass. Or even fags now, it doesn't matter, but I rather altered states rather than meditation. I don't like to meditate. But meditation will serve the same purpose. It breaks down the default mode network and allows for a better connectivity with the universe, because your connection is going to be very poor in the default mode network when you can't see past me, myself and I. Now, I wanted to say something else about this. Yes, so basically take yourself out, become your own best friend. You actually learn how to love yourself. Now, Peterson makes a big fucking deal out of this and calls it narcissism and all the rest. He hasn't got a fucking clue. The biggest fucking narcissist there is him. Narcissist is him. See him last night talking a load of shite. And my mother used to always say, when you get a name for being an early riser, you can stay in bed all day. I was watching an interview of him last night where he just babbled the greatest of shit, where he ran people down. He just babbled shite, complete rhetoric. And he said, this is funny, and everybody laughed. This is funny, everybody laughs. He tells him this is funny, and everybody laughs, because he has a following of sheep. Laugh at that, cry at that. Anyway, this is not about Peterson. So I was going to say that once you learn how to be alone, and whether you get depressed or not when you're alone, depends on your attitude towards the way things. Cook yourself some nice meals, study, watch good films, but different films. Go for walks. Walks in nature are particularly good, because again, it's improving your connection with the universe, and not just helps you see past me, myself and I. So basically what you have to focus on is your attitude towards the way things, and you have to learn how to be your own best friend. But it's very important to learn how to be alone. Very important. Because then you don't need love. And when you don't need love, then when it does come, when the universe gives you certain feelings, or the universe writes you a certain narrative, at any given point you can say, fuck this. You can say, no, this is over. This is over. I don't need this shit. I don't need this shit. I'm not clinging to this. This is over. Bang. And this is when you really dig the heels in. And this is when you really know what the self is. You can say to your soul, no, this is over. Over. This is over. I'm breaking these chains. I'm breaking these chains. And that's very important to be able to do that. No fear of being alone, no fear, no neediness, no clinging. You just break these chains and out the fuck. Break it, and then you dig your heels and say, I said no. Unless you have a hip of drink and you send those texts, but you just say no. I don't need this. No, I'm just fine alone. Thank you very much. And that's a great thing to be able to fucking do. Once you learn how to be alone, you can walk away from anything. You're not caught in a relationship where someone's battering you or abusing you. Basically, when love is over, you get to get up from the table. When love is no longer being served, you get to get up from the table. And that's very important to be able to do that. Now, what else was I going to say about loneliness? Yeah, about depression, yeah. So that's some of the causes of depression. Bad diet. I see people travelling here and they're depressed, but there's a number of reasons. I might talk about that in another video. But a lot of the reason is they eat nothing only pasta. They don't have a good enough diet to form have the nutrients to make all the hormones and neurotransmitters need. Bye. Let me go.